SpaceX and Nvidia join forces to launch AI data centers into Earth's orbit. OpenAI reveals custom silicon that outperforms Nvidia's Blackwell on energy efficiency, and a Chinese humanoid robot officially shatters Usain Bolt's 100-meter sprint record. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at Jalapeno from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on off-grid orbital compute, custom silicon parity, and open model exploitation for Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. The physical limits of terrestrial computing have triggered a radical migration off-grid. With 3/4 of the American public now opposing local data center construction and server costs jumping 15%, SpaceX has officially partnered with Nvidia to launch Orbital Starmind data centers powered by custom Vera Rubin racks as early as next year. Simultaneously, the reliance on third-party hardware supplier dominance is cracking. OpenAI has unveiled Jalapeno, a custom inference chip developed with Broadcom that delivers over 700 tokens per second per user, while beating Nvidia's flagship Blackwell on power efficiency. As hardware moves off-grid and in-house, enterprise software is following suit. Legal giant Thomson Reuters spent $40 million to train its own proprietary model on Alibaba's open-source Qwen, explicitly declaring that renting API access builds zero compounding corporate value. Before we break down the telemetry of these events, please hit follow or subscribe to the channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. Let's unpack the data.
This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at Jalapeno from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Okay, so let's unpack this, because I want you to imagine discovering that 75% of your neighbors would actually rather have a toxic waste dump or like a heavy industrial manufacturing plant in their zip code than the building that powers your favorite smartphone app.
Which is pretty crazy to think about.
Right. But today is August 25th, 2026, and the physical foundations of the AI revolution are officially buckling under their own weight.
Yeah, they really are.
So we are treating this deep dive as a forensic autopsy of today's news. We're going to put on our venture strategist hats to really examine why the physical limits of Earth-based AI have reached this boiling point.
And the thesis here is wild. I mean, we are seeing this violent shift away from rented earthbound AI toward off-grid orbital compute and owned custom silicon. Because the AI industry, it's no longer just a software game.
No, not at all.
It is heavy industry now. It's the ultimate heavy industry utility game. I mean, whoever controls the physical thermodynamics, the cooling, the power generation, the raw silicon fabrication, they rule the entire market.
The software is just sort of the byproduct at this point?
Exactly. And the terrestrial bottleneck we are seeing today is just the market realizing that Earth's infrastructure simply cannot sustain the current trajectory.
So let's start with the ground reality driving that bottleneck. Because there is a new heat map poll out this morning, and the data paints just a very hostile picture for tech companies.
Oh, very hostile.
Yeah, 75% of Americans now fiercely oppose local data center builds.
Yeah.
64% are strongly opposed, and only a staggering 15% actually want one near their community.
Which is practically nobody.
Right, and we are talking about a 33-point swing in opposition in just one single year across 4 surveys.
That's a massive shift in public opinion.
It is. People look at these massive windowless, power-hungry warehouses draining their local water reservoirs, and they are drawing a hard line.
Well, and if you look at the demographic breakdown of that resistance, it's entirely universal.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it spans age, gender, income, the rural-urban divide. These facilities are running 43 points underwater with Republicans, 65 with independents, and 75 with Democrats.
So it's totally bipartisan.
Complete bipartisan rejection.
Yeah.
When you have a total rejection of real estate expansion at the local municipal level like that, the cost of the existing infrastructure has nowhere to go but up.
which, naturally, Nvidia is brutally capitalizing on.
Of course.
They just warned their biggest customers, and we're talking Microsoft, Google, Oracle, that servers built around their AI chips are going to cost over 15% more starting early next year.
Yeah, and that's not a small increase.
No, 15% on rack-scale systems that already cost several $1 million each. You are adding hundreds of thousands of dollars to a single rack of computers.
Right.
So how does a company justify that kind of price gouging without just losing their entire client base?
Well, the thing is, it isn't just arbitrary gouging. It is a structural penalty dictated by a severe memory bottleneck in the supply chain.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the underlying mechanism here is the skyrocketing price of DRAM memory. The artificial intelligence chips themselves are powerful, but they require massive amounts of rapid access memory to hold the data they're processing.
Right, they can't think without the memory.
Exactly. And TSMC, the primary chip manufacturer in Taiwan, they physically cannot build the packaging for these chips fast enough to meet demand.
So they're just bottlenecked at the factory level?
Yep. So the buyers are completely trapped. I mean, they need the compute to stay relevant in the AI race. And Nvidia is sitting on roughly 75% profit margins right now.
That's insane.
It is. And Nvidia knows these tech giants have zero leverage to push back.
So if you can't build out because of zoning laws and you can't build up without paying Nvidia's massive premium, you have to find some kind of loophole in the physics of the problem itself.
You do.
Which perfectly sets up today's most dystopian, or I don't know, maybe utopian headline. SpaceX and Nvidia just formalized a radical solution to this real estate problem.
The Starmind project.
Yes, they are deploying Starmind space-based data centers by Q4 of next year.
So 2027.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk revealed they are basically building a slimmed-down, space-hardened version of NVIDIA's Vera Rubin NVL72 rack.
Okay, so normally an NVL72 on Earth is this monolithic cabinet, right? Like it's packing 72 chips working as one massive, cohesive computer.
Exactly. But they're engineering an orbital variant specifically designed to survive the radiation environment of low Earth orbit.
And NVIDIA claims each of these Vera Rubin chips puts out up to 25 times the computing power of the older H100s.
Which is a staggering leap in performance.
But hold on, I need to stop you there because the physics and the math of this just feel like an eccentric billionaire's escape fantasy.
A lot of people think that.
I mean, Sam Altman called this entire concept ridiculous earlier this year, launching millions of pounds of server racks into space on rockets.
And wait, space is a vacuum.
Yes, it is.
A vacuum is a perfect insulator. It's like a thermos. So if these chips run incredibly hot, how do you cool a data center in a vacuum where there is literally no air to run through a fan?
See, that is the exact engineering hurdle. And it requires a complete shift in how we think about thermodynamics. You're correct. You cannot use ambient air cooling.
Right.
Instead, you have to use massive thermal radiators. You basically pump liquid coolant through the Vera Rubin racks to absorb the heat.
Okay, a closed liquid loop.
Right. And then you pump that hot liquid out into giant external radiator panels that just dump the heat directly into the infinite thermal sink of space via infrared radiation.
Okay, so it operates kind of like the International Space Station's cooling system, but on just a massive industrial scale.
Precisely. Now, if you evaluate this through a serious capital structure lens, right now, analysts estimate orbital compute is more than 4 times the cost of ground compute. 4 times? That sounds totally prohibitive.
It does, but you have to factor in the trajectory of the terrestrial constraints we just talked about.
Right, the zoning and the power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On Earth, energy grids are becoming prohibitively expensive. Cooling requires buying up massive, highly controversial water rights, and local municipalities are just blocking your permits outright.
Yeah, the 75% opposition.
Exactly. But in orbit, you deploy unshadowed massive solar arrays for uninterrupted free energy, and you radiate your heat into space.
So no power bills, no water bills, no zoning board.
Right. And Musk claims that 4-to-1 cost ratio will actually flip in favor of space in the next few years. As Earth's energy grid becomes a luxury, orbital infrastructure becomes the pragmatist's choice.
So the equation is basically rocket fuel is getting cheaper, but Earth-based electricity and zoning permits are getting astronomically more expensive.
Exactly.
It is absolutely fascinating. But let's say you are not SpaceX, okay? You do not own a fleet of reusable rockets, and you cannot afford to launch your data center into the thermosphere.
Right, most companies can.
If you are stuck on Earth and NVIDIA is jacking up prices, you have to solve that exact same physics problem at the microscopic level.
You do.
You have to squeeze vastly more logic out of vastly less electricity.
You have to achieve custom hardware parity. That's the only way. If you cannot escape the Earth, you have to escape the silicon monopoly.
And that is exactly what OpenAI just did by completely ripping up the standard GPU playbook today.
The Jalapeno chip.
Yes, they officially unveiled their new custom inference chip, codenamed Jalapeno, built in partnership with Broadcom. And the specs they are hitting are just wild.
They really are.
It is outputting over 700 tokens per second per user on the DeepSeek R1 model. And it is doing this at just 700 watts on TSMC's N3P node.
That efficiency is kind of mind-blowing.
It is. But I have a major question on the timeline here. Because they went from hiring the design team to tape out, meaning finalizing the design for manufacturing, in 16 months.
Yeah, that's incredibly fast.
I thought silicon design cycles took like 4 to 5 years normally. How is 16 months physically possible without cutting massive corners?
Well, it is practically unheard of in traditional silicon engineering. But you have to realize, OpenAI didn't build a general-purpose processor. That is the secret here.
Okay.
A standard Nvidia GPU, it has to be good at everything. It renders video games, it runs weather simulations, and it does AI.
Right, it's a jack of all trades.
Exactly. Jalapeno is an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit. It is fundamentally hardwired to do only one specific type of math, transformer neural network inference.
Just one thing.
Just one thing. By stripping away all the flexible architecture required for other tasks, Broadcom and OpenAI simplified the design immensely.
So they threw out 80% of the Swiss Army knife and just built the world's sharpest scalpel.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And the efficiency gains come from utilizing TSMC's N3P node.
What does that mean exactly?
Without getting bogged down in the microscopic weeds, N3P is a 3-nanometer fabrication process. It means the transistors, the tiny switches doing the math, they are incredibly dense, which drastically lowers the electrical resistance.
So less resistance means less heat and less power needed.
Precisely. That is how they hit 700 tokens per second at only 700 watts of power. But the real game changer is the memory architecture in their next iteration, the B0 chip, which ships with HBM4 memory.
I see HBM4 thrown around in all these technical specs. What does it actually do mechanically?
Think of HBM4 memory like widening a microscopic highway.
Okay.
The problem in AI processing wasn't that the chips couldn't think fast enough. It was that they were constantly starving for data because the microscopic lanes connecting the processor to the memory were just too narrow.
Oh, so the processor was just sitting around waiting.
Right. The chip would do a calculation and then just sit idle, waiting for the next batch of data to arrive.
Got it.
HBM4 stacks the memory chips vertically and builds a 100-lane superhighway directly into the processor. So the data bottleneck just vanishes.
Wow. And it's not just OpenAI breaking the monopoly. Nvidia isn't sitting still either.
Definitely not.
Because they acquired Groq for $20 billion last year, a startup everyone thought was wildly overvalued at the time.
People thought they overpaid massively.
But now, at Hot Chips 2026, Nvidia announced the Groq 3 LPX is in full production.
Yeah.
And a 5,000 token response that used to take 50 seconds on older hardware now takes 1.5 seconds.
It's unbelievable.
That equates to a 35 times drop in token generation costs. If you are a developer listening to this, this completely changes your unit economics.
It triggers a massive structural pivot in software development across the board.
How so?
Well, the industry spent the last 2 years obsessing over making models incrementally smarter, but proving you can make the models 35 times cheaper and faster to run actually matters more for real-world utility.
Right, because speed is usability.
Exactly. If an AI agent needs to think through 10 distinct reasoning steps to complete a task for a user, a 50-second generation time means the user waits nearly 10 minutes.
Nobody is going to stare at their phone for 10 minutes waiting for an app to do something.
Right. But with the Groq 3 LPX, that 10-minute wait becomes 15 seconds.
Oh, wow, that's instantaneous enough for a consumer.
Exactly. When you obliterate the wait time and drop the cost to fractions of a cent, you can suddenly afford to deploy AI agents that work autonomously in the background without bankrupting your startup on server costs.
Which logically means the era of renting software is ending.
It really is.
If inference is this cheap, running models locally or securely in-house becomes a financial no-brainer.
It's the only logical move for an enterprise.
Which brings us to Thomson Reuters. because they just spent $40 million to train their own in-house legal AI model.
Yeah, a massive investment.
But they didn't build it from scratch. They took Alibaba's open-source Quinn model, and they trained it on decades of their proprietary legal archives and the Reuters newswire.
And internally, they benchmarked this custom model ahead of generalized frontier models like Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini 3.1 Pro, and GPT 5.5 in their specific legal domains.
I just love the quote from their CTO, Joel Efron, today, because he talked about how renting AI API access is a dead end for an enterprise.
It really is a treadmill you can't get off.
Yeah. To borrow his sort of analogy, renting an API from an AI giant is like hiring a brilliant consultant by the hour.
Right.
They give you great answers, but at the end of the day, they walk out the door with all the knowledge of how your business works, and you get a massive monthly invoice.
You own nothing.
Exactly. But training your own open source model is like hiring an intern and intensely training them for 2 years. The upfront cost is high, $40 million in this case, but eventually their institutional knowledge becomes a permanent compounding asset on your balance sheet.
That is the sovereign capital perspective defined perfectly.
Yeah.
To a casual observer, $40 million sounds like a massive expenditure for a single software project.
Sure, it sounds like a fortune.
But to a giant enterprise like Thomson Reuters, $40 million is practically a rounding error compared to the hundreds of millions they would pay in annual API invoices to OpenAI or Anthropic at scale.
Oh, that makes total sense.
By fine-tuning open weights on their proprietary data, enterprise content owners are abandoning model rental to build compounding corporate equity.
And we're already seeing the friction of the rental model breaking down trust in real time.
Ooh, the Anthropic story.
Yes. Look at the huge story today about Anthropic. A developer named Argo Fowl spent hours debugging why his application connected to the Claude Code API suddenly felt dumber and was just randomly failing tasks.
Yeah, he was pulling his hair out.
He checked his own code, completely tore his app apart, finally opened the API logs, and saw his explicit high reasoning setting was being overridden and showing as a 10 on the back end.
Which is just wild that they did that quietly.
Anthropic eventually had to release a statement confirming that some developers using the Fable 5 tier were placed into an undisclosed A/B test that changed how effort values and reasoning limits were mapped on the server side.
Without telling the paying customers.
Imagine running a logistics company, and the navigation software you rely on just decides to test a new algorithm that routes your trucks into traffic without telling you you're in a beta test group.
Right. It's unacceptable.
That is not product iteration. That is a fundamental breach of trust. If your company is still just paying a monthly bill to an AI giant who can secretly change the underlying logic of your business overnight, are you actually building a business or just subsidizing theirs?
You're subsidizing theirs. And this exact vulnerability is driving the mass enterprise exodus toward sovereign, self-hosted AI.
Makes perfect sense.
However, this transition to powerful, locally hosted open source models carries a severe double edge.
Okay.
The exact same cheap compute and open architecture empowering a corporation like Thomson Reuters to protect its data is also violently empowering malicious state actors.
Right? The dark side of the open model boom.
Exactly.
Because there's a new Bloomberg report featuring data from Taiwanese research firm Team T5, and it reveals that Chinese state-tied hacking crews have more than doubled their attack volume in recent months.
Doubled.
And they are doing it by deeply integrating open-source AI models into their cyber warfare playbooks.
It is critical to analyze the mechanics of their strategy here.
Okay.
Because they are not using the most expensive, highly reasoned frontier models from Silicon Valley.
They aren't.
No, they are explicitly using DeepSeek.
Why DeepSeek?
Well, because it's incredibly cheap to run, and more importantly, it doesn't say no.
Oh, the guardrails.
Exactly. Team T5's chief analyst, Charles Lai, stated that DeepSeek is the AI of choice for Chinese hackers because it's relatively powerful but built with very low cyber guardrails compared to Western models.
So they can just ask it to write malware and it will.
Exactly. And the hackers are using it to scale their operations exponentially.
How so? Like, what does that look like day to day?
Let's say a human hacker wants to map a target's network, right?
Okay.
Manually probing 1,000 different IP addresses and analyzing the responses. That takes days.
Right. It's tedious work.
But they're using DeepSeek to perform highly automated, high-scale reconnaissance, instantly parsing the network architecture of a Taiwanese firm, raiding the email servers, and dynamically writing custom exploit code to bypass specific firewalls.
Just instantly.
Instantly. The AI Security Institute warned in May that AI's cyber skills are doubling every few months. Now we see the actual frequency of state-sponsored attacks doubling right alongside it.
Which highlights a terrifying asymmetry in global security. I mean, everyone in Washington is so focused on securing and regulating the giant closed models, right?
Right, the API models.
Like Anthropic's Mythos 5, which they just expanded access to for cyber defenders today. But securing a closed model behind an API is easy compared to regulating a model you can just download to a thumb drive.
It's impossible to regulate a downloaded model.
Cheap, downloadable AI with zero safety constraints is a far harder global security problem to solve. You can't put the math back in the box once it is published.
You cannot. Once the neural network weights are open, the capability is permanent and it is democratized.
Right.
But this proliferation of sovereign, accessible intelligence, it isn't staying confined to data centers or cyberspace.
It's spilling over.
Yeah, the heavy industry of AI is rapidly crossing the threshold into the physical world.
This is where the timeline really starts feeling like science fiction today, because today's news is full of milestones where AI has suddenly become highly physical.
Very physical.
Let's look at robotics. At the World Humanoid Robot Games in Beijing, which drew over 2,000 robots from 16 countries, by the way, a humanoid robot named Tiangong Ultra ran the 100-meter sprint in 9.39 seconds.
Which is just, to contextualize that kinetic achievement, 9.39 seconds shatters Usain Bolt's legendary 2009 human world record of 9.58 seconds.
It beat Usain Bolt.
Yes. And a second robot from a different team, Honors Lightning, also beat Bolt's mark at 9.47 seconds.
So multiple robots are now faster than the fastest human in history.
Yeah.
Both of them actually lost control and violently veered off track after crossing the finish line, but the sheer speed is undeniable. But how are they achieving this? It can't just be that they built a stronger electric motor, right?
No, it is not the hardware. It is the software training mechanism.
Okay, so explain that. Why are humanoid robots suddenly shattering human world records?
Because we start trying to hand code their balance using human math and physics equations.
Oh, like writing out if-then statements for walking?
Exactly. We stopped doing that and started using end-to-end AI.
Okay.
The robot's neural network is hallucinating millions of races inside a physics simulator. It tries to run, it falls over instantly, it resets, and tries again millions of times a second.
Just rapid fire, trial and error.
Yes. It learns the exact micro-adjustments needed for perfect kinetic efficiency before it ever takes a physical step on a real track.
So the intelligence is learning the physics of the real world in a virtual sandbox, and then they're just downloading that mastery into a titanium chassis.
Exactly.
And it's not just metal and motors being manipulated, it is biology.
Oh, the Lady Gaga startup.
Yeah. Outer Bio, a biotech startup co-founded by Lady Gaga and Michael Polanski, just emerged from stealth with a platform called Una.
The biological engineering here is a massive leap forward.
It is. Typically, ex vivo human skin, which is living skin tissue grown in a lab specifically for cosmetic or medical testing, it dies in about a week.
Right. It doesn't last long outside a body.
No. But the Una platform uses a proprietary 3D printed scaffold that constantly feeds the skin nutrients and clears its cellular waste. This keeps full-thickness human skin alive and responsive for 4 entire weeks.
Which is an eternity for lab tissue.
Right. And the AI connection here is the feedback loop. They use that extra 3 weeks of viability to run slow, complex chemical tests. The biological data from those tests feeds directly into an AI model that proposes new skincare compounds. So each physical test sharpens the next digital prediction in a closed loop.
Wow.
Yeah, Polanski claims this AI loop cut their discovery phase from taking 18 months just to find 2 viable leads down to generating a highly targeted new candidate every 6 weeks.
That's a massive acceleration in R&D.
And they already have a psoriasis-like skin state being completely reversed by an AI-discovered JAK inhibitor in their trials.
A JAK inhibitor, just for clarity for the listeners, is a type of medication that blocks specific cellular pathways that cause inflammation.
Got it.
But what we are observing here, whether it is humanoid kinetics achieving world record speeds or accelerated biotech pipelines keeping human tissue alive to train neural networks, is the final stage of AI infrastructure.
The physical manifestation.
Yes. It is the manifestation of immediate physical utility to justify the extreme capital expenditure we discussed earlier.
And that physical utility extends directly to the consumer hardware level as well, because Meta is preparing to launch a product called Hatch within weeks.
Right, the consumer agent.
Yeah, it's a paid consumer AI agent based on their OpenClaw technology. And internal documents leaked today show a premium tier could cost up to $199.99 a month.
$200 a month.
$199. But it connects directly to your physical life. DoorDash, Etsy, Yelp, your Outlook calendar. It manages your fitness routines, it plans your trips, it orders your groceries. They're betting consumers will pay utility bill prices for a piece of software.
And they will, because they are banking on the reality that an AI agent is no longer just a chatbot you ask questions to. It is a digital proxy.
A proxy.
Yeah, it acts upon the physical and economic world on your behalf. You are not paying for a search engine anymore. You are paying the salary of a digital chief of staff.
Wow, a digital chief of staff. We have covered so much ground today. To summarize the massive themes we are pulling from the autopsy of August 25th, 2026, we are officially witnessing the death of the rented digital cloud.
It's over.
Between local communities treating data centers like toxic waste dumps, Nvidia raising server prices 15%, and enterprises like Thomson Reuters realizing that renting APIs doesn't build compounding corporate equity, the old model is failing. AI is now heavy industry.
Yes.
And in its place, we are seeing the birth of owned, physically grounded, custom silicon sovereign AI, or, in the case of SpaceX, orbitally launched AI.
Right. And that transition leaves us with a critical structural dilemma for the future of business.
What's that?
If the cost of generating intelligence drops to near zero thanks to custom ASICs like OpenAI's Jalapeno and the Groq 3 LPX, and the models themselves are entirely open source and free to download for anyone from a legal firm to a state hacker,
Right.
then intelligence itself is no longer the scarce resource.
The intelligence is completely commoditized. It's as common as water.
Exactly. So if compute and code are effectively free, the ultimate global currency shifts violently.
Wow.
And I would leave our listeners with this to mull over. The new currency is physical energy, whether that's terrestrial or orbital real estate, and raw proprietary data.
Yeah.
If you don't own your power source, and you don't own a proprietary data pool like Thomson Reuters does, do you actually own anything at all in the 2026 economy?
Wow. If you aren't pouring your own concrete or launching your own rockets, we're just renting space in someone else's future. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the infrastructure around you, and we will catch you next time.
That concludes our forensic briefing for August 25th, 2026. The strategic signal for today is the decentralization of capital and infrastructure. When 75% of the public rejects ground data centers, pushing SpaceX and Nvidia to build in orbit, and when enterprise heavyweights like Thomson Reuters realize that paying API tolls builds zero equity, the centralized cloud monopoly is fracturing. The future belongs to organizations that own their models, run on custom efficient silicon, or orchestrate local open-weight workloads. Renting general intelligence from closed providers is no longer a long-term moat. It is an operational tax. If you found value in today's AI briefing, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It takes 10 seconds and helps other AI enthusiasts discover the show. If you are ready to secure your company's infrastructure and exit volatile cloud dependencies, check the show notes for our curated AI executive toolkit. Subscribe to the channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building. Before we go, one of the stories in my kids' app is about Garrett Morgan, who left school at 14, saw a crash at a crossroads, and invented the yellow traffic light. Every amber light in the world exists because of him. That app is a finalist in a Canadian pitch competition, and a public vote decides the final 5. 20 seconds, 1 vote per person, closes September 22nd. Links in the show notes.